దాసరి గారు వచ్చేసారా?
ఓటు కూడా వేసాను ఈరోజు.
ఓ వీళ్ళు మొదలవుతూనే ఉంటారు కానీ మరి మొదలెడదామండి. మొదలెట్టేద్దాం అయితే. So, Shruti, sorry, Jayati.
Yes, sir.
So we shall start then.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right then. So we can have an introduction of the speaker.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this post-lunch session on the second day of AICTE Atal-sponsored Faculty Development Program on Advanced Geocomputational Techniques. To speak on
Jayanti, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, sir. So I again welcome you all on the second day of AICTE Atal-sponsored Faculty Development Program on Advanced Geocomputational Techniques. To speak on the mathematical morphology in geoscience and remote sensing, we are honored to have with us Professor Daya Sagar, who is an Indian mathematical geoscientist with specialization in mathematical morphology. Let me take this opportunity to introduce our renowned speaker and guest, Professor Daya Sagar, to the audience. Sir has received MSc and PhD degrees from Andhra University, India in 91 and 1994, and since then he has held many responsible positions. Sir has also worked with Center of Remote Imaging, Sensing and Processing at the National University of Singapore and various other positions there. He also served as associate professor and researcher in Faculty of Engineering and Technology at Malaysia. His research interests includes mathematical morphology, digital image processing, fractals and multifractals, their application and abstraction, analysis and modeling of geophysical patterns. Sir has published more than 84 papers in journals and has authored or guest edited 11 books or many special theme issues for the journal. He has recently authored a book named Mathematical Morphology in Geoscience and GIS Geoscience. He has also recently co-edited a special edition on filtering and segmentation with mathematical morphology for IEEE journal. His recent book on Handbook of Mathematical Geoscience, 50 years of IMAG, has crossed over 1 lakh downloads within 3 months of its release. He has also been elected for Royal Geographical Society in 1999. India Geophysical Union in 2011 and was a member of New York Academy of Science during 96 and 95. He has received many awards, naming a few: Dr. Balakrishna Memorial Award from Andhra Pradesh Academy of Sciences in 1995, Krishnan Gold Medal from Indian Geophysical Union in 2002, Georges Marathon Award in 2011, lectureship of International Association for Mathematical Geoscience and IMAC certification and appreciation in 2018. Sir, I welcome you to this web program and also invite you to address the audience.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
And it's always a pleasure to give a talk for the audience at IASC. And so I was told by Professor Ramarao that it is a kind of faculty development program. And at the end of the program, I was also told that there would be an exam. And he also asked me to propose a couple of questions. But when there is an examination, I don't want to really start from the scratch. Because if I start talking about mathematical morphology in entire geoscience and remote sensing, it would take about 12 hours of lecture, if it is tightly planned. So since it is only 1.5 hours lecture, I don't want to really make you feel bored. And I'll just share the PowerPoint slides, and I will talk about a couple of slides, and then I would prefer to use the board so that you can understand what exactly is morphology and why it should be really taken up by geoscience and remote sensing scientists uh, to deal with the problems that you all have, research challenges. One of the basic data that I would be using throughout is the digital elevation model. And I'm sure you are all very familiar with digital elevation model. And many people argue that DEM comes with a lot of errors and uncertainties. But my answer for all that is, as long as DEM is a very precise and error-free, and then what are the kinds of algorithms that we can really develop and update to venture into the world of digital elevation model. And I would say that DEM is like a black box. It has number of hidden features, and for our naked eye, and you will realize that it has lot of information. But how to really retrieve that is a big challenge. For that, of late, I have written a kind of opinion piece for IEEE Geoscience and Remote Sensing magazine, and it was with a lot of arguments with reviewers and many people and the editorial board. Finally, it was accepted. It is the idea of digital elevation model, a rich source of data for geoscientists. It has a lot of information, but to unravel that hidden morphological, geometrical, and topological features of interest to geoscientists and remote sensing specialists, and one should know a bit of a specific mathematics which has a lot of geometric relevance and geometric essence. One of such mathematical tools that I have realized, which is very important, and people have not realized that it has not many applications that one can show on whether it is remote sensing data, whether it is hyperspectral data or digital elevation model. And that is where in that opinion piece we have ended that by telling, and there should be a specific curriculum that we have to introduce at the undergraduate level and postgraduate level to make it as a specialized topic. And what is the topic, and quite relevant mathematical tools in the applications of digital elevation model. So one of them is mathematical morphology, others being spatial statistics, geostatistics, fuzzy set series, wavelet series, and there are many other things. Of course, we all deal with digital image processing, and I have seen who all have been using the DEM as a source data and applying various different mathematical approaches. All those mathematical approaches, I would say, it's all mixed mathematics. Is there a single mathematical field that can really address many of the challenges that we have been facing in day-to-day life while dealing with remotely sensitive data or its byproduct, that is digital elevation model, right? And I'll just share the screen and to talk about a few slides, and then I will come back to the original, the using board, and for you to actually realize the importance of mathematical morphology, which is a field, and if you are familiar with it, you would enjoy it, and if you are not familiar with it, it would actually motivate you to venture into the field of mathematical morphology to have morphological thinking. Further, you can really develop your own mathematical morphological algorithm. So this is the topic I have proposed when Professor Ramara has asked me a week ago. And this is the topic I actually keep changing it. Sometimes I use it for mathematical morphology in spatial data sciences. Sometimes I use it for mathematical morphology in geoscience and remote sensing. And the slides would be the same, but the title would be tuned a bit, right? And so it is very interesting to know that Ramara has organized this kind of FDP program, which is really very useful for young people to venture into, because only young people can take these skills to the higher level. So I would skip many of the slides, and so this lecture is all about making the audience aware of a kind of field that is mathematical morphology in spatial data sciences. Mathematical morphology is more of a European type and which is not very popular when we compare with wavelet field. And to tell you here, wavelet transforms and algorithms are all linear transformations, whereas in entire mathematical morphology, all the transformations algorithms that we look at are all nonlinear type, and that is where we get lots many advantages to apply the nonlinear morphological filtering technique. So as I mentioned, one of the spatial data which has a lot of relevance, and I would say DEM is a kind of physical system, and DEM would change, and you have time varying functions, highly time varying like cloud, and slowly time varying, probably like sand dunes, and even very slowly changing is the terrestrial surfaces, and some surfaces won't even change. You can say that they are all static surfaces. But when you consider our remotely sensed data, and which would change with light and atmospheric conditions, and of course, if there are changes due to some flooding activity or earthquake, and you would see the change. But one particular field which is not much affected by the anthropogenic activity, we don't have any artificial surface, at least on the planet Earth, that is not really exploited by anthropogenic activity. But one of that fields and the data that I would really like to emphasize is digital elevation model. So the main ingredients of spatial data science or geodata science include information retrieval, information analysis, information reasoning, and information modeling and simulation and visualization. All these ingredients are the part of spatiotemporal behavior. Or if you want to really study the dynamics of a specific phenomenon or a specific process that you see on the existential surface, whether it is highly time varying or slowly time varying or static, and you should have all these ingredients in place. And if you have source data very accurate, as I mentioned, DEM comes with a lot of errors. And but with LiDAR technology and then of late NextMap and then Aster DEM, and people have been telling that they are very less noise or errors. And that's where you have the role of these ingredients. This particular footnote I would always keep: is there a single mathematical field that can address challenges that I mentioned here, like information retrieval analysis, reasoning, modeling, simulation, and visualization? And what is that single mathematical field? I realized at least by spending almost 3 decades, mathematical morphology, though it is a bit slow compared to other methods, and it has full mathematical basis, and people can really think through morphological thinking, and then they realize what is actually happening, and you can become a kind of domain expert when you use powerful mathematical tools, right? So deal with spatial data science with mathematical morphology. This is what I say. And I would skip this why and what, and I have already specified this brief introduction. And there are so many cases, and all these cases, actually I have shared this PPT file with Professor Ramarao to share with all of you. And I don't want to really show and explain everything because time is actually not sufficient. But just to tell you, these two people are Georges Matheron and John Ferrar, the co-founders of mathematical morphology. They are powerful computer scientists, and then they are also pure mathematicians. They were holding 2 PhD degrees, one in pure mathematics and the other one in engineering. And you will see so many digital elevation models synthesized, and in a synthetic way how we have generated a digital elevation model that mimics the terrestrial surface, and we have elevation field, and then some kind of Apollonian space, some kind of images from where we could extract water bodies, and then construction of a kind of zones of influence. In our earth sciences terminology, these zones of influence are nothing but our water things. And then there are many, geospatial challenges which were not actually covered in any of the commercial software. Like, so given a set of objects, and which object is actually strategically located, and what are the objects? probably our 29 states are, each state is a kind of object, spatial object. And if someone asks you which is at the statistically located place, and we should have some kind of distances. What are those distances? Not certainly the Euclidean distances, but some kind of asymmetric distances which would come from morphological theory, and right. And then, so what is that I actually emphasize more in the coming 1 hour on the board is how to compute the texture, whether it is the texture of the image or texture of digital elevation model or texture of the watershed that is partitioned from digital elevation model, how to compute the texture, and I would explain a kind of technique called granular sand grain analysis. And how do we see that sand grain analysis in the when we put that into the perspective of remotely sensed data, and you just take that, and it is not just the color, shapes, and other properties would be used in classification of images. And very, very important property is also the texture and structure and shape, and how to use those things. And looking at any image, a kind of spatial function I would call, like the human face, which is in a grayscale, ranging between 0 to 255 grayscale values. And in entire mathematical morphology, the images are actually seen as a kind of relief, terrestrial relief. In the terrestrial relief, the variable is the elevation at each spatial position. Whereas in my face and that, the variable is the grayscale value, the spectral reflectance value. Sometimes if you look at synthetic aperture radar data, and you have the backscatter strength is the variable, and whatever is the variable, but whole morphology sees the data as a kind of elevation surfaces, and it goes with those kind of elevation surfaces, how to partition them in a meaningful way. The best way of partitioning is through watershed principle, and then the immersion simulation. There are many different algorithms to actually partition the data. And in the partitioning the data, you have topographic loss and topographic height. And if you allow water to flood, and from various different water bodies, where exactly those flood water front lines will meet each other. And that is where we construct the bund, and we say that it is a watershed line. And that is one of the best approaches to partition the data, right? And such is those are the aspects which would come under grayscale granulometric analysis. And if you are intuitive, and if you are able to think through mathematical morphology, and you can give a host of different, roughness measures of the terrestrial surface. And that is one part I would cover. And the other part is when you have source data like this and target data like this, and if the source and target are of, let us say that these are two different regions, the terrestrial surfaces and their corresponding DEM. If you want to just play with the source and target, like motorbike becoming a tiger, and motorbike is the source data, and tiger is the target data, and you have to somehow metamorphose the motorbike into a kind of tiger. And what is that we have to do? And the way we actually interpolate between the numbers, and we can also interpolate between the images and the corresponding objects. As I mentioned, and I won't go into one major part of mathematical morphology, that is binary mathematical morphology, which is again based on Minkowski operation. So Minkowski was a mathematician who has given Minkowski sum and Minkowski addition some over 120 years ago. And the whole mathematical morphological operations are relying on Minkowski sum and Minkowski subtraction. And I won't go into those details because that would take almost first 2 hours. And then, but because I'm avoiding those important part, I would really encourage you all to look at this particular slide where I have given a series of lectures, and these lectures were actually given at different places. But many of the lectures were given at IIT Kharagpur, in an NP style lectures were given, and if you have about if you can spend your 20 hours of your valuable time, and you can go one by one and you can understand how good is mathematical morphology to really venture into, you are really looking for a research problem, and this is a problem that you can confidently take up, and because there are many open challenges in mathematical morphology applied to geoscience, remote sensing, and even in medical imaging. Hello. Can you invite? No, I think so. Can you all hear now? Can you hear?
Yes, sir, we can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, but there is some disturbance, some noise coming.
Ramaraj, can you hear me?
సారీ కాల్ డిస్కనెక్ట్ అయింది.
Can you hear me?
We can.
But that noise is still there, right?
Yeah, still there, but maybe little closer. I think we can at least manage with that. At least with, closer to the microphone, we can manage with that.
Yeah, but I tried several weeks and I could not figure it out where exactly this noise is coming.
Maybe your fan is somewhat noisy.
Yeah, I think of my fan.
No, that's not, that is a fan sound is gone. I think no. No, that is in the the communication. I think we can go ahead with keeping little closer to your face so that we can manage with the little louder speaker.
Yeah, I increase the volume. Okay.
Okay, we can go. That's unfortunate.
So I will again go back.
Earlier I tried to talk to him. It was the same problem. Okay.
So this is the slide, and you can actually have a lot of YouTube lectures and which are placed at different places. And then there are some animations, and you can have a look at it. And then many transformations are there, but I would only concentrate on, as I mentioned, two topics. Those topics include, one is to quantify the texture, and how do you derive those numbers to quantify. If someone asks you what is the texture index of a specific water type, and how do you measure that? And so you have to come out with an index called morphological entropy index. And for that, granulometric analysis I would explain. And the other one, as I mentioned, source to target, and how do we keep inserting the interpolated sequences in between source and target. One median function has to be computed, and then something like this. And then between the median and the source, you can create one more median function. Between the median and the target, you can create one more median function. It is a hierarchical process until there is no further scope to insert one more interpolated function. And once you have very tightly packed, it is nothing but converting highly discrete data into a continuous data. And for that, what we handle is morphological interpolation. What is required for granulometric analysis to compute the texture index, and what is required to perform morphological interpolation, and I would cover only those parts. And then you can actually have a look at these slides which I shared with Professor Ramarao, and I'm sure he would share with all of you, and then you can actually link whatever that I teach on the board with the actual cases in the subsequent slides, right? And then, so I will skip many of these things, and to also to how I conclude, and I would show, depending on if someone is very keen to see and how this mathematical morphology has been used in retrieval analysis, reasoning, and modeling. I think this is the special issue that I can recommend, and it is published some 2010, 10 years ago in the International Journal of Remote Sensing. And then if someone is trying to venture into advanced level of mathematical morphology, I would really recommend this filtering and segmentation with mathematical morphology, which was edited along with the Pedros Margos, Dan Schonfield, Lauren Najman, and then Junior Barrera. All these people are pioneering mathematical morphology across the globe. And then this was the initiative which we have shown in 2017, just to showcase the Indian remote sensing achievements, and this was the JSTAR thing. But the chapter, this is the entire book is about mathematical morphology. We can, I will probably share it if Professor Ramarao wants to distribute, and I can share this book and you will see. And there is a chapter 35 here in this handbook that is actually provides a mathematical morphology and illustrative examples. You will see only a kind of album like features there. And this is one open call for papers for IEEE JSTAR specifically on mathematical morphology in geosciences and remote science, right? And with these are the things, this is the promise, and you can actually look at these slides later on. And then now actually I would like to go on to the board. I think you have to bear with that minor irritating sound, but I could not somehow avoid that. I have been studying for the last 2-3 weeks whenever I was doing analysis. And to tell you a simple thing, f of xy is equal to 3, I would call this as a kind of spatial function. Spatial function. What are all the spatial functions? And you can tell a simple remotely sensed data, a grayscale image, probably the panchromatic image, itself is a spatial function. Because you have x and y spatial coordinates, and at each spatial coordinate you have certain variable value. I'm calling it as z. And this variable value, if you take this spectral reflectance value, and it is a glacial value, we usually use as immediate. And if you are seeing this get value as an elevation value, obviously it is very predominant in digital elevation model. And if you are talking about, let us say, population density over a gridded space, and population density itself is a variable, and you can put them in a kind of normalized form and then perform what all that you learn here. You talk about racial demography, you have a way to use in our but we are only restricting ourselves for this motion thing and zero science. So this is what I call it as a spatial function, and this spatial function, the range of the values that this spatial function can access is between 0 and 255, because I am seeing each spatial function as a kind of 8 bits per pixel. Or 8 bits per pixel, it is how it is being stored. And then when you talk about the spatial function, and it is not, you have multi-valued information within this spatial function. You have 1 spatial coordinate, 1 2, 1 3, 1 4, like that. Let us say you have 5 12 by 5 12 spatial function, and we could access the variable values ranging between 0 to 2, right? And this is what is the case. And let us assume that there are two spatial functions. There are two spatial functions, f of xy and g of xy. Both are of the same configuration, but with different, grayscale composition. And can you call these things as a kind of random topographic function? Random topographic function. You can easily call this as a random topographic function, because each of the functional value at xy location is being treated as a relief. Relief in the sense mountains, valleys, mountains in mountains, and valleys in valleys, and it is a kind of a kind of the function. And so there was a word called base plus function, and it is actually like this. You get the base plus function, and you can smoothen it. You can smoothen it, or within this function you have even minor variance. All these things will come with the spatial resolution. Spatial resolution. And what are the three different resolutions that you have to really bear in mind? One is spatial, and the other one is spectral resolution, and the other one is temporal resolution. Temporal resolution. We have been seeing that the spatial resolution, higher the resolution, smaller the size, but more detailed. And lower the resolution. Problem? Now I have it.
Hello?
Any problem?
No, go ahead. Go ahead. So, actually, little audibility, can you able to little move the that particular microphone or headphones to you, so that your voice will be little better?
Oh, still feeble, huh? Why?
Yeah, little.
Probably I'll try to move the table.
Yeah, I think should be fine now.
Yeah, probably it is a bit close.
Yes.
And so why I have shown these three different resolutions that you have to bear in mind. And when you want to convert, sparse data into dense data. And what exactly it is in a DEM context, and probably these are the concepts. I would say this is sparse data. But when I want to make it in a very dense, and I have to somehow insert the missing contour value, derivation contour value, I can actually make the sparse data into dense data. So that comes actually under morphological interpolation, which I will cover further. and then spectral. And we are talking about a large number of channels in a hyperspectral data. So suppose you have this is like a channel 1, channel 2, 3, 4, 5, and you want to make it as a super resolution data. Is there a way that you can insert one more in between 1 and 2, in between 2 and 3, in between 3 and 4, in between 4 and 5? Actually, you can increase the sparse spectral resolution channel into dense spectral resolution channel. In the same way, converse is also true. Suppose you have a missing channel in between the two successive channels of spectral data in a queue, and can you really approximate that by inserting one more? How to handle that? Again, that would come from Markov spectrum. And of course, temporal resolution, why do we use temporal resolution? And you want to study the dynamics and how a specific phenomenon or a process is changing with time, and we can actually handle that with again Markov interpolation, and there is an extrapolation approach also based on the Markov interpolation, right? So all through we will be using this spatial function, and from spatial functions, if you want to map some features, and you can follow, you can convert them into map, and the moment I use map, it is nothing but the information. And there should not be no noise, there should not be any noise. And that is basically a feature. Let us say I could extract the water body from a spatial function by following some algorithm, or in simplest case I would follow a thresholding strategy. And if I know the base scale value of the range of the structured water body, and I can specify them and I threshold the spatial function and I convert that. And that and all would come out in binary math analysis or spatial object analysis. That's what I am not actually covered, and only on spatial functions and two basic operators, mathematical operators, are actually written by. In entire mathematical morphology, something is investigated with something else. A function is investigated with another function, or function is investigated with a kind of factor. So G, I would like to choose G as a kind of factor. And that fact is, let me say that this is the this in the 8 scientific degree, and I will call this as G. And if G is equal to B transpose, it is symmetric B. And why when G is equal to B transpose, we have to define where is the origin. If origin is at the center, if I rotate it to 180 degrees, if it is in the same B, and I call B is equal to B transpose, and it is symmetric. And symmetric. And it has different names, and some people will call this as structuring element, and some people will call this as a kind of template, some people will call this as a kind of window, right? And how do you actually, you take a spatial function, and you want to erode that spatial function, and I will put this spatial coordinates here, and it is written as minimum of f of x plus I and y plus j, and where I and j actually belong to B. It is very simple. And what we do is, when you have a grayscale function or a spatial function, in each of the grid cells, what is the value, and you consider within the neighborhood. Let me say the value here is 64, value here is 32, and here it is 15, here it is 16, 18, and 25, 32, 64, 19. Let us say this is one particular subimage of the spatial function. And if I have to translate this particular value according to this equation within the window, that is this window, by making sure that organ is superposed on this, and within this window, what is the most minimum value? That value would replace this particular value, and that is the meaning of this particular morphological evolution. And if you use this converse, If you use it with converse, that is morphological dilation of the spatial function. And there we use the minimum, we use maximum, that is given x plus I and y plus j, and ij belonging to G. And because I have chosen G like G, and I am taking all 9 elements within the 3 by 3 neighborhood, and then I keep conforming the window, move the window, and then follow the structural grammar, and then change the value. And if you are taking the minimum within the neighborhood and replacing the central value with the structural minimum value, and that is morphological erosion of grayscale morphological erosion. If I am using maximum, that is grayscale morphological dilation. And if you want to change it, G, because G comes with certain characteristic information. It has a size, it has a shape. What is the size? Size is frequency. That is the primitive size that you can create a kind of disk, a symmetric disk. And what is its shape? By removing the corner element, I will call this as a disk in the forecast, or you can call this as a rounder. And you can design and define this D according to your own will and wish to with a proper justification why you want to change this structuring element geometry, and there should be a strong reason. Sometimes we can actually convert the structuring elements into one-dimensional structuring elements. You can take multiple one-dimensional structuring elements and perform the analysis. And this D controls the shape, and side of D controls the shape, and you want to change the shape of the spatial function, and you can reduce the resolution of the spatial function by performing cascade of erosion followed by dilation. What is the cascade effect? You perform erosion by D first, and then perform dilation by D.
घर छोड़ कर देंगे ना चल जाएंगे हम देख लेंगे तुम लोग तो आजकल देख रहे तो हमसे
Right? And so this cascade operation is actually called sorry. Then so this is actually called morphological opening by D. Morphological opening by D. So if you keep on performing this on the output, you have a spatial function, and that spatial function, you have a spatial function, and you can, if you open that, what is the opening? And erosion followed by dilation. And if you perform opening by 2D, what is 2D? And B is B. This is B. And if you dilate B with B, another B of same specification, and you will get a bigger size B, that is, let me say it is 5 by 5 size. That is a 5 by 5 size. And you can increase the size of B by dilating B with another B. And if you dilate this 2B size B with another B size structuring element, you will get 7 by 7. And in turn, this would go like S erosion by B, followed by erosion by B, followed by dilation by B, dilation by B. Typically, this is the size 2B. And the effect of erosion that is happening is not with just this one. And collectively, with recursive erosion would give the effect of erosion by this 5 by 5. And then 5 by 5 dilation. And by doing this, you lose information with spatial function. What is that information? And I would say what is the area of f of xy? What is the area under the surface? If you are taking the volume of under the surface, we typically compute all the grayscale values, sum of all the grayscale values over xy position. And by performing this morphological opening by B, you would lose certain information on spatial function. Because it is smoothing. Surface, roughly the surface is becoming smoothing. That smoothing is happening in a non-linear fashion. Why it is going in a non-linear fashion? You are actually eroding the surface, and again you are trying to reconstruct the surface by following the same B with a different operation. And these two are not to the same degree when the surface is very complex. And in turn, the cascade operation which I have shown here as morphological opening is a nonlinear operation. And if you keep on performing with a larger size B, F opened by 3B, it is nothing but F erosion by size 3B followed by dilation by size 3B. And then F opened by n minus 1 size B. Right, and so you keep on doing this, and it keeps losing information. It's corresponding one-dimensional thing like I told. As you perform erosion, and it becomes like this. As you perform dilation, what happens? And it doesn't come back to its original state, but it moves the particular. You have lost this information. And this is originally f of x. And this is f opened by b. Let me say f opened by 2b, you will still lose information. And you will still lose information. That's what I am saying, it is f opened by 2b. And f opened by sufficiently large number of larger size b, probably it is f opened by size 10b. And at one level, and f opened by n size b, that is largest size, and it becomes the whole spatial function would be occupied with global minimum value. And assuming that 15 is in the spatial function in the lowest, and there is no other value in any distance lesser than 15, and then all the distance will be filled with 15, and that is the field that we see. But what is happening between original to the last level, last cycle of opening, and how the information is being lost, and that is where we have a kind of spectrum we can construct. And I will call that as pattern spectrum of the spatial function S with respect to B, because B is very important. If you change B, the loss of information pattern would stay. And so this is at nth level I put it, because it is increasing. Initially it is 0B, 1B, 2B, 3B, n minus 1 size B, and then f opened by n size B. That is the last level, how this loss of information is being distributed. And to compute that loss of information, you can construct a spectrum. This is called pattern spectrum of f with respect to B of order n. So n is in between 1, 0, 1, 2, and so on, and this capital N. You can be very right. So this is also called case size pattern. Case size pattern. I think many of you are very familiar with fast Fourier transformation, and in fast Fourier transformation, you quantify the petal content. But similarly, here you quantify the state size content in a kind of surface, whether it is simple remote sensing data or its byproduct that is visualization. So this pattern spectrum is nothing but compute F open by M size T, a generic equation. You take the area. What is the area? Sum of all the grayscale values over all x minus. This is a simple algebraic subtraction. F open by n plus 1 size T. N plus 1 size T. And you are subtracting this. This is what is the pattern spectrum. This is what is the pattern spectrum. Suppose if you plot the size T, size of T, initially started with 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, and let us say you have gone up to 10 cycles of opening. And then if you see the pattern spectrum at each level of x with respect to t, what is this loss of information? And if n is equal to 0, actually no operation happened here. But n plus 1, obviously, what is the sum of area of this particular opening cycle? You put it here, and then you subtract, and if there is no change happening, and you will get the value here. But at each cycle of opening, you keep losing information in a non-linear fashion. It is not uniform. If it is uniform, the kind of surface that you are handling is also very, there is no complexity there. And so this would allow us to actually compute. This would allow us to actually compute the texture within the. You are just taking the whole image or the image partition and then seeing the spatial function values within the partition boundary. And typically, if you take a digital regression model, you can partition them into watershed, and each watershed what is the roughness index. So how to compute that? Once you have pattern spectrum values, okay. So this is the loss of information. Suddenly you may see there is loss of information very high. There may not be much loss of information, and there may be loss of information. There may not be any loss of information. So this would actually explain what is the case size contained in the spatial function F that we are handling. Further, and we can actually compute the probability from this. What is the probability? For original function, you have the area and probability of nth level of F with respect to V is nothing but pattern spectrum value at that level divided by the area of the total function. As I mentioned, n is between 0 and so on up to some capital N. And for each n value, you compute this probability value. Each n value, you compute the probability value. And then you have a morphological entropy or uncertainty index H with respect to V is actually computed from P log P, which is Shannon's entropy equation, sum of all these values from n ranging between 0 to capital N, take its negative, and this would actually give you the texture value. This would actually give you the texture value for the spatial function that we are using. What all that you have been doing? You have morphological erosion, and that morphological erosion transforming it in a recursive fashion. Erosion followed by erosion is nothing but spatial function is eroded by E of type 2. Erosion followed by erosion 3 times consecutive erosion is nothing but the morphological erosion of the spatial function by B of type 3. And in morphology, you have for every transformation operation, you have a dual operation. And erosion is due to dilation, dilation is due to erosion. Right? So by using those erosion, dilation, dual operations, and we have actually performed a cascade form. Erosion followed by dilation is nothing but contract something and try to expand it to the same degree. Do you do some information? And it is like a rock body, and if you are smoothing it, and then if you want to after by erosion it gets smoothed, rock outline. Then you want to reconstruct its original thing, and you may not see the sharp peaks in the rock. It means rock has become smoothed. What is the process involved? Non-linear process was involved. And similar non-linear process here is erosion followed by dilation. And we are taking the surface, a chemical surface, and then we are performing erosion followed by dilation. And erosion followed by dilation. Erosion by n number of cycles followed by dilation by n number of cycles. When n is ranging between 0 to some actual n value, cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, cycle 4, and cycle 25. And how that loss of information, it is nothing but the alien changes. Some of the base scale values or some of the elevation values is changing to tell you the whole dynamics of the related structure. If you are talking about the image, and from this, what you can quantify is the texture index. So the texture based classification is also very powerful. When we talk about microwave remote sensing data, and there you don't see a big dynamic range as is the case with optical images. The dynamic range is very thin, but performing these operations very carefully, not with primitive size, the smallest possible primitive size. What is that? And so it is not a compact structuring element, but it can be a linear bipoint structuring element. And you can perform them and see with different directions how the texture is changed. If you look at for a whole watershed, within a watershed boundary, how the elevation values are changing, randomly varying, and you want to quantify that structure roughness. And that roughness with a compact structuring element like this would give you one structure value. If you change that to rounded type, you get a different value. What is the basic difference? Texture index would vary because of the P that we have given. If you change that P to directional structuring element from northwest to southeast, north to south, and northeast to southwest, and east to west, and you have 4 directional structuring elements. You can increase those directions of structuring elements in much larger number, and then direction wise it will perform, and these values would change. And if you want, if you have any research interest, and I can say several of our published work using grayscale granulometry, directional granulometry, and how the watershed, the spatial function within the watershed boundary, it is changing. And will it have any implications when we talk about the actual geodynamic pattern? So the entire process is actually called that I have shown here is called grayscale granulometry. Grayscale granulometry. So now you understood how to perform erosion, how to perform dilation, grayscale erosion and dilation. And you spend more time on that. Once you understood those basic operations thoroughly, then subsequent things you can just take a kind of spatial function and you put some values, very randomly, ranging between 0 to 255. And then you can create your own, tutorial like material. Right? And so this is one very important portion. And further, how we can use the same morphological grayscale morphological operation in morphological interpolation. The other topic which I would like to emphasize is morphological interpolation. And specifically grayscale morphological interpolation. As I mentioned, you have f of xy is a spatial function, and you have another function g of xy, or can be called in as channel. Channel 1 in a hyperspectral cube, channel 2 in the hyperspectral cube, and you have the corresponding spectral reflectance value. Right? And let us assume that these two are two grayscale functions, and I want to actually create a kind of interpolation between these. The simple idea, and let me explain it on a simple spatial object. Let us assume that this is a spatial object at time t. Because it is object, I am using the notation x. And the same x has become, over a period of time, it has become like this. And if I take xt union xt plus 1, like I have superposed this, and probably it will be like this. This is xt, and this is xt plus 1. Let us assume that this is a kind of water body at time t. Let us say it is January 1st, and the next available water body that you could extract is after 6 months. Let us say 1st of June, and there is a time lag of almost 6 months. But can you really convert the data which is highly discrete nature, because 6 months gap is too much of the time. If you want to find out how this xt has become xt plus 1, it's actually contracted. And can you create the in-between interpolations to find out what should have been this particular water body during 1st March? This is I am telling you is January, this is June, and during March and how it should have been. And for this, we have a simple one way is a kind of medial line. A medial line. So, but how to simulate this process? And this is the medial line in a kind of non-weighted way. I have put that, and maybe you know this is actually something that is contained in something else. But sometimes, and the same water body over a period of time, it has also shifted its geometry, changed its geometry, and shifted its width. And then it is not contained in this one, and I can say this xt is partially contained in xt plus 1. And whereas here, xt is contained in xt plus 1. So xt plus 1 is contained in xt. And this is a simple case. Sometimes the cases will be much more difficult. And so this is the idea. But if I extend that to the spatial function, and in a spatial object, we have a set of morphological equations. And on a spatial function, let me again go back to probably in a one-dimensional function. This is the f of x. And I have, let me put this is and this is g of x. So if you want to put a kind of interpolation between f of x and g of x, and a non-weighted median function would be something like this. Something like this. And I will call it as median between x and g. In a 1D case, I am telling, but whereas in 2 two-dimensional the spatial function. It is not just one variable. When you have the spatial positions, XY positions are there, and you have XY positions are there. So for this case, now you know about simple morphological erosions and dilations. Simple morphological erosions and dilations. Their case is, and just to brush your knowledge, is minimum of f of x plus I and y plus j. Ij belongs to B. And similarly, you have dilation of x1, which is maximum of f of x plus I and y plus j. And Ij belongs to B. What is B? B is our simplest template. And we can keep changing this template. And if you have a different rate and justification, and you will like B is equal to beta. And I would call this as a flat structuring element. Flat structuring element, because everywhere it is 1. And can you create non-flat structuring element? Yes. They will be even more useful when you perform a very smooth transition from source to target. And that we can actually venture in, that's not too difficult. And these operations, if they perform X erosion by erosion, and so on until erosion by B for n number of times. N number of times. I will write this as X erosion by n times B. This is a simple multi-scale racial morphological operator. Similarly, F dilation by B, dilation by B, dilation, and so on, dilation by B for n number of times. N number of times is X dilation by X times B. X times B. What happens when n is equal to 0? When n is equal to 0, whether you perform erosion or dilation, it shows no effect because it is not effect. It is completely not effect. And using this the background knowledge, we can actually compute the median between X and B. And I'm not putting this expression in the the median function, you can actually compute between these. What it requires? You should know how to compute point-wise minimum between F and B. If you have a value of, let us say 15 here, you have a 64 here, 85, 91, 80. So point-wise minimum, which is 15 and 64, you have to write the intima between F and G. Intima between F and G. Because we work on intimas and suprimas. Intima between F and G is point-wise minimum. And 15 and 64, you take minimum of these two point-wise minimum. 82 and 85, and you take 80. And 62 and 91, you take 50. And again 15 and 85, 50. 255 and 255, 251 and 64. Like that, point-wise minimum would get you the intima between the function f and function g. Similarly, you can also take this suprema. Suprema is point-wise maximum. So typically, you have generated two more spatial functions. What are they? F intima g and F suprema g. You have source and you have target. The idea is to compute morphological median between F and G in a hierarchical fashion. What is that hierarchical fashion? First we have to compute the point-wise minimum and then point-wise maximum. This is one special function, this is another special function, and then intima has to be dilated by n squared g, suprema has to be eroded by n squared g. So it is just a visualization, and if you understand these things, put it on a simple side-by-side matrix, and you keep trying, and then finally whatever you get, you feel that that is a morphological median. And then you can actually think that there are many challenges in spatial visualization and spatial interpolation to compute the missing frame in the hyperstructural cube and to compute the or to find out the redundancy in a hyperstructural cube, and dimensionality reduction is a huge big challenge. People are following, band selection is an important problem. And in the band selection, you can use this morphological interpolation. One of the additional ways, and we tried and we published a paper to show that morphological interpolation based band selection is much superior than correlation based thing. And once you do this, you have to again take input of these two outputs, and then you do this for all n values ranging between 0 to capital N. And you take initially between the two spatial functions, one intima function you create and suprema function you create, and intima has to be dilated by 0 space b, and suprema has to be eroded by 0 space b to get, and then you take the intima between those two outputs, and that is the 0th level median function. And similarly, intima should be dilated by size b of size 1, and suprema should be eroded by b of size 1, and you increase the n value from 0, 1, 2, 3 until there is no further change in the succeeding level of median function. And for all those median functions, whatever that you get by taking the intima between these two outputs, and you have to take the suprema of all those things. If you have generated for n is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 10, if you do that, and you get 11 outputs here by doing this. All those 11 frames, and you take the maximum, point-wise maximum value, and then put that in the final function. That would be the median function between f and that would be the median function between f and. This is a generic equation. And as I mentioned, everywhere in mathematical morphology you have dual operation. Erosion is dual to dilation, and dilation is dual to erosion. Opening is dual to closing. Closing I have not actually explained. The closing is instead of erosion followed by dilation, like in opening the operation, you perform dilation followed by erosion. And what happens in erosion followed by dilation? It's different cycles by increasing the size of B, and you are actually seeing loss of information. By performing dilation followed by erosion, actually you will gain information. And it is like on a simple binary case, and as you are performing the opening cycle, you keep using your start peak in the outcome. And at the higher cycle of opening, and you still use the start peak. And finally put somewhere. And all these would be x opened by B, x opened by 2B like this. And when you perform dilation followed by erosion, and you start seeing this outside these rows are actually closed, and different levels it gets closed. And this is something similar to, stronger cell construction, old cell construction, and all that. So these patterns are in between the convex cell and axial cell. And of course there is a skull, right? So that idea, like dual operation, and like all of erosion dilation is dual operation, closing, closing of dual operation. In mediums also we have morphological medium dual operation. Dual operation would be the equation would be same, but we change the logical operation of the this would be kept on dilated, and then intima would be kept on eroded, and in the intima here, you take suprema. Instead of suprema here, and we take intima for all n values in this integration. So this is real morphological medium. And so here you have how many things you have left? You have original spatial function, a target spatial function. In between you have one median function, and of course it's a dual median function. And using these things, then we create what is the median between f and median of f and g. Similarly, median between median of f and g and this is and their dual median of f and median of real median of f and real median of g and real median of f. So this is a hierarchical process, and so it goes like initially you have 2 power 0, there is 1 million function, and then 2 power 1 you have 2 million functions between median and original, and between median and target you get 2 interpolations, and then you have 1 zeroth level median, and first level median 2, and second level median 4, and it goes in 2 power n times. And then f has actually become f2 by putting all those morphological mediums that we have inserted between f and g, and you can actually show in a kind of AVA file if you put them f how it has been transformed into g in a slow fashion. But it is up to you how these ideas can be employed in when you deal with hyperspectral data. You have in hyperspectral cube rather sparse channels, and you want to make them dense, and you can perform successive channels, and then perform choosing channel 1 and channel 5 as f and g. And can you create how many kind of interpolations you can create? But these things needed powerful validation. Powerful validation. I think with this, now you know. Just to wrap up, because this is also 4:30 as told, and you have you know about basic basic morphological grayscale operation, grayscale morphological operation, and you know about grayscale granulometry, grayscale granulometry. You know about morphological grayscale medium computation. Actually, I have not covered anti-granulometry here. In granulometry, throughout we have used opening cycle. In anti-granulometry, we use closing cycle. This is typically F dilated by M squared G followed by erosion by M squared G. And actually this would go like when you have a function like this And opening based randommetry, you are keep on losing the information. Keep on losing the information. Right? And whereas the closing based randommetry, you keep on gaining the information. How the gaining is coming and it is getting close. These flows are getting close. Right? And you can actually compute the texture of the foreground and texture of the background. For every image, you can compute the foreground texture and background texture. Is there any relationship between foreground and background texture? I think that is worth exploring it, and we are just trying, but unless we have some theoretical support and proof, and we could not, actually we tried and we didn't go to that level. I think with this, I would show once again the PowerPoint slide. Yeah. So all this, as I suggested, and if you want to understand about the basic binary morphological operations and binary granulometries, and um, there are other types of, you have many different data of different variables like temperature, rainfall, and moisture conditions you get at the point specific location. And how to convert those point specific data into polygonal data. And of course, you have better geometric methods like, Voronoi polygons, construction, and all that. But skeletonization by influence zones, that is another powerful morphological interpolation, which I have not covered. And then you can actually look at some of these YouTube lectures if you are keen. And then there is what is the relationship between object A and object B? What is the directional relationship?
दिल्यानं मी सांगितलं की आमच्या इथलेच आहेत ते सर त्यांनी आणलंय. आणले का
So you can-
तू विसरतेस आता इथं आल्यावर आपल्याला मुलाची पण आठवण देते वाच कोणीतरी आल्याला त्याची काय आठवण मग मी म्हटलं मी तिला प्रॉमिस केलं हा नाही काय आहे की मलाही विचारलं पण मग आता बघ मी वरचीला दिले 2 हा त्याचे तिने दिले पैसे पाठवून आणि त्याचे ठीक आहे त्याचे हा 2 परत अजून हा
Kindly unmute yourself.
Yes. So all this you have. So these are the many, spatial functions. I actually love to work on digital elevation models. This is a synthetic elevation model. This is in a Malaysian territory. There is a topics DEM, and then this is San Francisco Bay. Under the water, what are they actually, the ground surface, how it looks. And we have this, and then if someone really wants to go advanced level and wants to try all these operations like morphological interpolations and granulometric analysis through graph mathematical morphology. So in that, the spatial function would be first converted into graph with simple nodes and weighted nodes and edges, and then you perform all these morphological. You have graph-based morphological erosions, graph-based morphological erosion, dilations, and all those things. And then adaptive mathematical morphology. Many people used to ask how to choose B, an appropriate B, that is structuring element. That is where the adaptive mathematical morphology comes into. Right, and so some of the very basic morphological transformations I have explained here. And then these are some of the equations which I have not covered because they are all coming from binary mathematical morphology. But you can see these are the grayscale morphological operations I have already shown. And then there come the multi-scale morphological operations. And then when you change B from flat to non-flat, and they would be like, the non-flat structuring elements are again a structuring function. I have given some kind of simple toy model like calculation. You can refer to these pages, right? And so to specifically show you the texture quantification, this is where what happens when you have a spatial function of a specific watershed like this. With increasing number of opening cycles from cycle 1 to 40, 40 to 80, 80 to 1 to, we have shown a few snapshots. You can see the spatial function is becoming darkened and darkened with the increasing cycle of opening. Whereas its converse is also true, that is with increasing cycles of closing, where dilation followed by erosion would happen. With cycle 1 it is this, with cycle 40 it is this, cycle 80 it is this, and it is becoming brightened and brighter. Here you are losing information, here you are gaining information. This gaining and losing information is in a non-linear fashion, and that is very important when you study the dynamics of the connection surface, right? And so multi-scale opening closure, this is done with rhombus structuring element, and this is done with a square structuring element. This is done with octagonal structuring element. If you change structuring elements, you will see different host of different patterns and surfaces. And we have applied those granulometric analysis ideas for the watershed wise things, and by taking the Cartosat DEM, and then we have classified, and this classification is done based on the simple texture index values. And those texture index values we have done with the compact structuring element B. And if you change those, you can see how we have given very arbitrarily, we have given the ranges. The granulometric index value is between 0 to 0.25, 0.26 to 0.5, 0.51 to 0.75. These are all normalized granulometric index values. And when you choose, directional granulometric index, in what direction it has a texture index is very high. This particular watershed, cycle 1, and it has the roughness is more in this particular northeast and the southwest direction, whereas adjacent watershed has the roughness value is more in this particular east-west direction, and this is with north west and southeast. Like that, the directional texture values we have computed for the watershed that are decomposed from Cartosat. And this is about morphological interpolations. We have source and target, and by using those equations, morphological median computation equation, between source and target, you have one median function. Between source and median, you have another median function. Median and target, you have another median function. It is a hierarchical process until there is no further scope to actually insert the morphological. And this we have used, and the morphological distances we have used to find out the most similar regions, best space to worst space. And within the image of the DEM, you can partition them into quadrants, hierarchically partitioned into quadrants, and then every quadrant to every other quadrant, what would be the distance there? We have given a kind of approach to compute the ranking for pairs of sub-images within an image. And then it could actually tell you how to group those regions which are with the similar morphological surfaces and composition. Yeah, I think I would skip much of many of these things, but with this, I think I have covered almost 1.5 hours. If there are any questions, and I would be very happy to answer.
There are few questions.
Yeah.
One is how drainage morphological modeling, how to do drainage morphological modeling for paleo channel delineation.
Yes, paleo channels delineation. So if it really shows the superficial variation, I know actually paleo channel delineation, and if you keep on reducing the resolution, let us assume that we are actually taking a digital elevation model, very high resolution DEM, and if you keep on reducing the resolution and then start computing the valley network, if you start computing the valley network at every reduced resolution, And assuming that high resolution DEM is there, and you systematically reduce its resolution. How do you reduce resolution? You keep performing cycle 1 opening, cycle 2 opening, cycle 3 opening. Actually, we are going from very fine to very coarse resolution, spatial resolution, in a nonlinear way. And then you start computing the Valley network. Actually, I have not shown the skeletonization equations here. And by using the simple skeletonization transformation, you can actually compute Valley connectivity network. How those Valley connectivity networks are actually seen changing with cycle 1 to cycle 2, cycle 2 to cycle 3. And this is a crude guess, and that may be one aspect one can try. The other thing, probably with microwave data like radar data. Radar data also you can actually perform this reducing the resolution from high resolution to the coarse resolution, and there is a possibility of demarcating the failure channel, because these are all typically buried channels. And in microwave radar based DEM and radar based images would be most appropriate than computing any optical image. So this is my idea, but I have never tried. But long time back, so one of my super seniors were handling about marking the failure channel. Of course, they validated it with by taking the the geophysical surveys they have done, whatever they have demarcated, they have gone to the site and then they have done geophysical surveys, whether the water is being identified at the shallow level.
Sir, this is my question actually. I just want to add some views that I am already using the radar-based DEM, actually ALOS Pulsar DEM, which is a conceptualized model based on the radar and I just want to, sir, just what you have told that is very good idea, sir, to minimize the resolutions of the DEM.
Yes.
So better, sir, we should go for different resolution DEM, like we have 10-meter DEM, 20-meter DEM, 30-meter DEM. Then we can model it or better understanding the morphology.
Yes, that's also an idea, and I think probably you should also look at directional granulometry. Directional granulometry, if you look at,
Yes.
I think that may throw some light.
Okay, sir.
Kindly, I will just, moderate. Next question is by Mahalingam. Mahalingam Bose, please.
Okay.
Good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Sir, this satellite-based sensor, it measures the elevation of the building top as well as the canopy of the trees. Like this elevation, when we use this elevation to prepare the drainage network on the ground.
No.
So how much accurate we are? Yeah.
If it is digital surface model,
yeah, sir.
Because those the radar-based DEMs are always superior.
Okay.
For any drainage modeling. Otherwise, and the tree canopies would disturb, and it would give you spurious network.
Okay.
And because I always get confused, digital surface model, the digital terrain model,
yes,
and digital elevation model.
Yes.
Elevation means, and I want to go to ground and I want to take the height.
Okay.
That height is actually what is the outlying soil particle height at that particular location.
Okay.
That we don't go. Most of remotely sensing are rather difficult, and because there are many errors, But that is why I want to be very cautious when I say digital elevation model. It is error-free and uncertainty-free.
And please mute. Whosoever is not the speaker, please mute. Mr. Hello, Dr. Venkateswara, kindly mute.
Question, sir. Venkatesh Rao.
Yeah, tell me. Venkat.
Good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. Tell me.
It's a not. Sir, my question is that, is it possible to model how overlapping of two spatial regions changes over time using this mathematical morphology? The context is that I am thinking is something we have the crops are there. There is a flood region is there. So the crops is a land regions and the flood comes there. It stays there for some time. How this flood region is overlapping with the land parcels? How when the crop is submerged in this water? Based on that, and based on the crop sensitivity, we can estimate how much damage happened to the
Yeah.
how long this particular crop is there in the submerged region. So how
Yeah.
really we model this one? These two regions overlapping changes over a period of time. So we want to model first mathematically we want to model how it changes or change of overlapping of these two regions. For example, one is land parcels, another is the flood region. Changes over a period of time. Is it
You have
possible to apply
actually
this
time.
mathematical morphology for this particular?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have time series data of that?
Time series is the spatial data, maybe satellite data, flood regions will be there, and okay, assuming that we have the information.
Yeah. So actually, this is a change detection problem, but very accurate change detection problems I have seen through interferometric studies. In the interferometric studies, but I believe you are using optical data.
I have used
I
some
believe you are
synthetic
using.
data. I have used this some time back. This synthetic data that I myself generated using some geo software, grass or some. I remember.
Yeah. Actually, the texture would tell you, because if it is flooded region, obviously the texture would be very fine. And whereas if it is on the land which is not submerged with flood water, the texture would be very rough.
Okay.
And that can be captured with the granulometric analysis. It is also a good idea to use not just optical data. Optical data sometimes it would confuse us with lot of high spectral resolution would actually confuse us. This is my view, and probably there may be some other views on this.
Okay.
Next to Mr. Sandeep Bhardwaj. Sandeep, not there? Okay, then Mr. Ashish Paul.
Yes, sir. My question is that very good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, you are audible.
Actually, my question is that is it possible to do with this digital elevation model in forestry research?
Yeah, in forestry research, of late I had one nice talk at IGAS, and what they have done,
Okay.
canopy they are estimating by taking digital surface model and digital elevation model. They are actually subtracting.
Okay.
So
Okay,
digital
sir.
surface models mostly constructed through optical data like spot stereo data, and
Yes,
because
sir.
there they cannot really penetrate through the tree height, and digital elevation model from probably SRTM. And if you subtract SRTM from the, let us say, Cartosat DEM, this is optical database DEM, and the SRTM is radar based DEM. If you subtract those heights, point by point height, I think that would tell you probably the canopy heights or the tree heights.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, actually, this is not my idea, but I could hear one nice talk by somebody from Netherlands during IGA.
Okay. 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 Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you.
So, any more questions, please?
Sir, this is Mahalingam. I could not hear you properly due to other disturbance.
Yeah.
Sir, actually, like when we use Cartosat DEM, as you said, it is an optical remote sensing, so it measures the elevation of the canopies, right?
Yes.
In that case, like when we use the Cartosat DEM to delineate the drainage basin, so how accurately the result would be?
No, that would be misleading.
Yes, sir.
That would be misleading. That's why I'm
Yeah.
telling any radar image based DEM
Yes.
or even airborne based DEM and would be more powerful.
Okay.
I would still say, the contour based DEMs are still safe.
Yes.
But what we do when we digitize the contour,
Yes, sir.
we will miss those granulations, very important granulations. But the moment you smooth out the granulation and you lose the streamline there.
Okay.
The accuracy of DEM is very important. Otherwise, it would lead us to other problems.
Which digital elevation model you may refer us to use it, sir? Like there are lots of freely available digital elevation models are there. So which you feel?
I would recommend you. Yeah, I would recommend you one very nice book I was reading that is about digital elevation data for geoscientists.
Okay.
That is a book written by some scientists at the British Geological Survey.
Okay.
And all chapters are very wonderfully written. There is one review chapter I read. They are talking about LIDAR DEM and Aster DEM.
Okay.
And so they are talking about, so people are, blindly applying some powerful filtering techniques, and then they are telling this is what they retrieve, but without any domain expertise. That is dangerous. But you read that digital elevation data for geoscience, and that book is a small book of 120 pages. It would help you.
Yeah. If you don't mind, can you repeat the book name 1 second, please, or I will write it down.
Just 1 minute.
Yeah.
That book name is Elevation Models for Geoscience.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
It was published by Geological Society of London.
Okay.
And it was edited by Corey Fleming, J.R.A. Giles, and March.
Okay, sir.
Mahalingam. Next
Thank you
is
so much,
Mr.
sir.
Raja Natarajan.
Gentlemen, sir, is water budgeting under NRM, under Natural Resource Management, be computable using mathematical morphology?
Water budget,
Yes.
I am not sure, but
agriculture.
But I don't know. So at least you can find out analysis of DEM through morphology. If you do that, actually you can compute the texture. So high textured characteristics do not support, the water penetration. But coarse textured surfaces would really allow the water to penetrate. I think that kind of inference you can give, but it is not, the full length water budget and water balances would be very difficult unless you have supporting data.
And the last question is, thank you, Mr. Is Mr. Subha. Shubha, are you there? So actually his question is it possible to remove shadow using mathematical morphology?
Yeah, but I think some careful hard thinking is required because the removal of shadows, and that would be a problem at the high hilly region. And you can only make some kind of prediction, probably through morphological interpolations and extrapolation. But that would be always debatable. Like it can be challenged unless there is a proper validation. But at least I have not done that work. But there is a possibility because so with open challenges and open problems only we will start thinking. I think one should really try, and there may be a possibility.
So I think that's the end of the question, sir. Thank you very much, Professor Dasagar. Jayati?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Dayasagar sir, for your informative lecture. We have the reviews from the audience that the lecture was excellent and very helpful. You stated the importance of mathematical morphology, then going into the practical perspective of implementing the basic operations of morphology, interpolation, etc. So you have actually opened the doors of morphological aspect in GIS for the audience. We also thank you for your effort you have put to share your expert knowledge and to answer the question and the doubts of the audience. Thank you, sir. I would also like to express our gratitude to the audience for their valuable presence and interesting questions they have put in this web program. So this is the end of today's session, and we will be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. morning with more talk and a session by a few more experts. I wish you all a very happy and good evening. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramana Garu and Dr. Jayati. Thank you so much for arranging my
Thank you,
talk.
sir.
Thank you. Audience are really, the questions are really difficult to answer. But if you are good, I think everybody is a kind of domain expert somewhere. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you all. So we'll see you sharply tomorrow at 10 o'clock. Thank you all. Have a nice evening. Bye bye.